So I've heard players say, including myself, I feared Mike. I've heard players in your generation say they feared Kobe. I've never really heard any players say they fear LeBron.
So I didn't think players really feared LeBron like they did Jordan.
Let's be real for a second. We've all seen the lists, the debates, and the arguments. But have you noticed who is always missing from Shaq's Mount Rushmore? It's not an accident. For years, the big fella has been dropping hints, throwing shade, and finally, he just snapped. He exposed the truth about why the so-called king doesn't sit at the grown-ups table. And honestly, once you hear it, you can't unhear it.
You were oozing joy before the game. Cameras caught you dancing. Where did that joy come from tonight?
That's always me. I don't know. I mean, it's always, I'm a goofy-ass 41-year-old kid. I mean, I think people should know that by now, right? I think that's, yeah, that's just me. I'm just a goofy, I get to play basketball. Like, they pay me to play basketball. Like, why wouldn't I be happy about that? I get to be with my son and my teammates and people, all these unbelievable fans. They've watched me throughout my career and they give me all the support and love. And it's like I enjoyed my, is it work? It's not even, I enjoy what I do. So have fun. You see me on the court, see me in the back. I just love what I do. So it's pretty cool.
Before we dive into the drama, here's the real question. Did LeBron truly earn the crown, or did the media hand it to him for longevity? Players from past eras still talk about the fear of facing Michael Jordan and the cold stare of Kobe Bryant. But no one says they were scared of LeBron. That's the core of Shaq's point. The old NBA felt like a war zone, while today's league is softer, led by a superstar who celebrates before tip-off and builds his GOAT case on records critics say Jordan would have shattered in this era. And that's not even what finally set Shaq off.
So I've heard players say, including myself, I feared Mike. I've heard players in your generation say they feared Kobe. I've never really heard any players say they fear LeBron.
So I didn't think players really feared LeBron like they did Jordan.
I never heard anybody say it.
And it's not that you shouldn't fear Bron. I just think at the end of the day, Bron has been through so much that he wanted to be liked. So it was kind of like,
he is a nice guy.
Yeah, I'm gonna do things
nice.
now where like people like me, people respect. I mean, you're always gonna respect what he did, but you actually like Bron and want to be a fan of Bron now. So I think that's what that was.
Shaquille O'Neal has been biting his tongue for years, but he finally reached his breaking point. Between the strange industry parties, the questionable fashion choices, and what he sees as total disrespect toward the legends who actually built the league, Shaq is finally saying what needs to be said. It really comes down to this. The NBA used to be a league built on psychological warfare. But LeBron James has somehow turned the most competitive basketball league on earth into a high school variety show. Think about it. The Lakers were fighting for their playoff lives, and the leader of the team gets on national television and describes himself as a goofy kid. This is the guy the sports media wants you to put in the same category as Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. Shaq didn't lose respect for LeBron because of how many rings he has. He lost respect because your so-called king seems more interested in being an entertainer than being a feared competitor. Look at how he handles pre-game routines. Back in the 90s, if you were getting ready to face the Bulls, you didn't see Michael Jordan doing a silly dance with his teammates. You saw a man staring at you like he was deciding which part of your game he was going to expose that night. If you played Kobe, you got the Mamba stare, that look that made grown men forget their own offensive sets. But with LeBron, you get TikTok routines. You get these awkward warm-up moments where he's flexing shirtless or doing that weird group squat with his teammates. It looks less like an NBA team preparing for war and more like a middle school drama club rehearsal. Shaq has been the loudest voice calling this out. He pointed out that when you watch those cringe videos, you start to understand why the fear factor is completely missing. For Shaq, being the greatest isn't about popularity, it's about dominance. You cannot call yourself the king if everyone in the league considers you a buddy. It gets worse when you realize this isn't just about his personality. It's about a total lack of intimidation. Even Kevin Garnett basically admitted years ago that the Boston Celtics weren't worried about LeBron back in the day. They didn't respect the aura. They didn't believe he could beat all 5 of them by himself.
You feel like you can break LeBron at this point?
We broke LeBron.
In Game 5.
So get your ass out of here with that, all right? You understand how you got to Cleveland, how you got to Miami, Bill? We didn't give a fuck about LeBron. We didn't fear LeBron, and we didn't think that he can beat all 5 of us. If you had D-Wade, Chris Bosh, and LeBron over in this corner, you had me, T.A., I'm just making these names up, maybe Paul and Rondo right here.
Yeah.
It'll be a what's up, and it'll be cool and respect, but it won't be any like fraternizing. It ain't gonna be like, yo, I'm the family. It won't be none of that. No, it's real. They don't fuck with us.
Forever, huh?
We don't fuck with them.
Now compare that to the stories about Jordan. There are actual accounts of players being too nervous to check into the game because Michael Jordan was on the floor breathing fire. Shaq's whole approach was simple. You show up, you break the rim, you shatter the other team's will, and you go home. You don't hang around to do a 10-minute dance number. That is exactly why the intimidation factor sits at 0. You cannot be scared of a man who calls himself a goofy kid right after his team just lost. Legends like Shaq don't just hate the stats LeBron puts up. They hate the vibe he brings. They hate that the guy who is supposed to be the greatest player of this generation has the emotional profile of a teenager scrolling through social media. But believe it or not, that still isn't the moment that made Shaq lose his cool. If you want to pinpoint the exact second the old-school legends officially checked out on LeBron James, you have to go back to 2016. Right after the Cavaliers pulled off that historic comeback against the Warriors, LeBron looked into a camera and basically crowned himself. He didn't wait for the sports writers. He didn't wait for the other legends to weigh in. He just looked at the world and decided he was the greatest of all time. And that right there sealed his fate with the old guard. In the era of Shaq, Jordan, and Kobe, you didn't have to tell people you were the king. You made them admit it because they were too exhausted from getting destroyed by you to argue otherwise. Do you really think Michael Jordan ever sat at a press conference trying to convince anyone he was the best? No. The actual GOAT was too busy winning 6 championships without ever needing a Game 7 in the finals. But LeBron needs the validation. He needs the marketing machine behind him. He needs you to see that chosen one tattoo so you don't look too closely at the actual resume. And honestly, the thing that gets under my skin the most is how the media pushes this narrative that LeBron is the greatest because his career lasted longer than most movie franchises. They love to bring up the all-time scoring record. But let's be honest about what that really is. LeBron played over 20 seasons to get that record. Michael Jordan won 10 scoring titles in basically 11 full seasons with the Bulls. LeBron has only won 1 scoring title in his entire career. Just 1. And if you want to talk about pure dominance at your peak, LeBron isn't even in the same zip code as Shaq. In the early 2000s, Shaq was basically a cheat code. He led a three-peat where he was the finals MVP every single time. And do not even get me started on the finals record. LeBron has a losing record on the biggest stage. That means, statistically, when the lights are the brightest, LeBron is more likely to walk off the court with a loss than with a trophy. Michael Jordan didn't leave it to chance. He didn't need to form super teams just to have a shot. And that right there is the real crime Shaq cannot forgive. It is the manipulation. Real legends like Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, and Michael Jordan stayed in their kitchens until they learned how to cook. They didn't run the second the heat got turned up. But LeBron turned the NBA into a game of chasing the perfect situation. In 2010, he gave us that television special, the most narcissistic hour in sports history, just to announce he was leaving Cleveland to join Dwyane Wade and Chris Bosh because he couldn't beat the Celtics by himself. When that situation got old, he ran back to Cleveland because they had Kyrie Irving. When that ran its course, he jumped on a plane to Los Angeles to team up with Anthony Davis. Shaq sees this for exactly what it is. This is a man who didn't dominate the league through sheer force of will. He manipulated front offices and stacked the deck in his favor. That is why when Shaq was asked to pick his all-time starting 5 recently, he left LeBron off the list entirely. He picked Kobe, MJ, and even Steph Curry over him. Honestly, the story of LeBron is the story of an incredible athlete who played long enough to make his counting stats look untouchable. But the story of Shaq is about a peak level of performance that LeBron never came close to touching. Jordan has 5 MVPs and 10 scoring titles. Kobe had 5 rings and a mentality that didn't need a PR team to explain it. LeBron has a losing record in the finals and a habit of changing teams like most people change their socks. So you have to ask yourself a real question. Do you want a king who earned it through blood, sweat, and loyalty? Or do you want a guy who padded his stats long enough to break records while chasing every shortcut available? Shaq made his choice a long time ago. And honestly, can we talk about the nonsense coming from some of these podcasts lately? LeBron actually sat there with a straight face and tried to convince people that playing 82 games today is physically harder than it was in the 90s. His whole argument is about pace and space, as if running around in an open gym is somehow more demanding than getting elbowed in the ribs by Bill Laimbeer. It is pure gaslighting. He is trying to sell this idea that fast equals hard, while completely ignoring the fact that back in the day, the paint was literally a crime scene. It is a slap in the face to every legend who had to ice their entire body in actual ice buckets just to be able to walk the next morning. Shaq fired back at this logic by pointing out that LeBron's longevity is a direct result of playing in a league that has basically banned defense. If the league hadn't introduced all these freedom of movement rules, LeBron would not be playing at 41. He would be in a wheelchair. Shaq lived through the era where you could basically commit a felony in the paint. And while LeBron is sitting out games because his biometrics say he might be at risk, guys like Isaiah Thomas were out here winning championships on one leg. It gets even more annoying when you look at the rule changes that basically gift-wrapped the game for him. The hand-checking ban and the defensive 3-second rule deleted the alpha defender from the game entirely. Shaq has said 1,000,000 times that if he played today with these rules, nobody would be allowed to touch him. But if you think the cringe dancing and the soft era stats are bad, you haven't seen the darkest part yet. This is where he lost the respect of the entire league. Because while MJ and Shaq were busy building empires they actually owned, LeBron was busy auditioning for a seat at the Hollywood celebrity table.
Yeah, we have to talk about it. There is a clip out there that has aged like milk. LeBron grinning like he just won a championship while hyping up those infamous parties. That moment has become one of the biggest stains on his legacy. Back in the 90s, the alpha stars kept their circles tight. They were the ones in control of their image. But LeBron didn't just attend those parties. He was the biggest hype man for a culture that has now been exposed for some truly disturbing activities. And that brings us to those photos that broke the NBA internet. Look, it does not matter if you think it was a marketing joke. For a lot of people, it looked like a humiliation ritual. The fact that the face of the NBA is even connected to that kind of imagery is exactly why Shaq looks at him with pure disgust. Can you imagine Michael Jordan letting an industry mogul put him in a costume like that? Can you imagine Kobe Bryant playing dress-up just to get a movie deal? It would never happen. But it's not just about the parties. It's about how he proudly promoted a culture that engaged in some very strange activities. And speaking of the fans, nobody has taken the paying customers for granted quite like LeBron. He has turned the most prestigious league on earth into a part-time job. Let's get one thing straight. You cannot be the king if you only wear the crown when the circumstances are perfect. Just recently, LeBron hit a career low that ends the debate for anyone with a brain. He missed a game due to foot soreness. Why does that matter? Because it officially disqualified him from all NBA awards. For the first time in almost 2 decades, LeBron isn't an all-NBA player. Not because he isn't talented, but because when the league needed him to show up, he didn't. LeBron has spent the last few years complaining about the 82-game schedule like it is a violation of human rights. But in the 80s and 90s, 82 games meant 82 games. Period. You didn't check your workload metrics before deciding to play. You played because that was the job. So after all of that, it is pretty clear why Shaq refuses to put LeBron on his list. It was never about jealousy. It was about respect, or the lack of it. The big man values the blood, sweat, and tears it took to build this league, not the celebrity status it provides now.
If you enjoyed this breakdown and want to see more truth-telling about the NBA, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching.